Hi, this is Brian Timoney and welcome to this video seminar on dealing with nerves and stage fright. Now, I'd just like to say from the outset that being nervous and dealing with nerves is a natural part of the process for an actor. You'd be inhumane if you didn't have nerves, and actually we need them to keep us alert and to allow us to do what we have to do on stage and on set. So the first thing you should recognize is that if you feel nervous before you work and during the acting process, this is quite normal and natural. However, we do need a way of dealing with it because we don't want it to destroy your work. So let's have a look at the whole area of nerves and stage fright and how you can deal with it. Let's look at the causes of nerves and stage fright. Okay, here's the number one reason: the fear of getting it wrong. So this is really to do with our own egos. I guess sometimes we think we associate ego as for being somebody who's overconfident and and sort of has a large ego. However, it does work in the reverse. The ego comes into play if we are fearful of getting things wrong. If you're going to walk on stage in front of a couple of thousand people, I guess it's natural to kind of fear messing it up. Now, this thought process that you go through as an actor can be very destructive, and it needs to be replaced with something else. So the fear of getting it wrong and the thought processes you have around that have to be reduced so that it doesn't interfere and affect your acting. Okay, your mind becomes occupied with issues not relating to the character. So really you become occupied with your own thoughts, your own personal individual thoughts as a person who's about to undertake something quite stressful, i.e. you're going to walk on stage or on set and you're going to be watched by a lot of people, and that obviously brings on a bit of stress and strain. And your mind becomes occupied with these other thoughts. So what we have to do is deal with these other thoughts and replace them with something more constructive. The number one thing that you should recognize around this whole area of getting it wrong and having to deal with people watching you as you work is that as you go into that thought process, you're involved in your own needs rather than the character's needs. So let me explain that a little bit. Characters' needs are the driving force of their behaviour. So what they need and want from life is crucial for you to understand, and it's really what drives them to do what they do and drives them to do it the way that they do it, as in the way that they go about things. So that's really important for you to understand and for you to bring to the fore during your work. However, what generally happens is that with nerves and stage fright, and stage fright is really a sort of an extreme form of nervousness. It's really where an actor completely freezes up and has real trouble, having to perform on stage or on set. So we really don't want to get into that position. And one of the reasons that happens is that the actor becomes concerned of their own needs of having to get it right, rather than the needs of the character. So, for example, your character might be, for example, completely in love with someone and really wants to express that to this other person and wants to marry them and settle down with them and so on. However, as you begin to work and start to portray that character, your mind may well get bombarded with these thoughts of getting it right, of not messing this up, and so the watching audience perceive you in the right way and they get what you're trying to do. Of course, these thought processes destroy the very thing that you are trying to create. So what we have to do is to engineer your thinking, if you like, to take it off of your needs, but then onto the character's needs. And our scenario here of somebody being in love with somebody, you need to start to engender that feeling in yourself and start to concentrate on the other person, and really bring their needs to the fore and go after what you need as a character. Okay, so let's look at the next bit. Yeah, another reason for stage fright and nerves is that you don't have a dependable proven process that works. Now, acting is no different from anything else in life. When we start to learn it, it's kind of difficult and then it becomes easier. If you're learning to drive, if you've ever went through that experience, you will know that in the beginning it is really, really difficult. It's really difficult for you to sort of take your foot off the clutch and move into gear and accelerate and indicate, look in your mirror. All these things are quite difficult. and then over a period of years and experience of knowing that those processes work, you become very confident and comfortable with them, and actually you can go from A to B and not really know how you did it. So it's amazing that having a dependable process that works produces a high level of confidence in the individual, and acting is exactly the same. However, I have to say that a lot of time in the acting processes and techniques, people can kind of lose their way slightly, and they don't have a proven process or a proven technique that works. And if they don't, then they're relying on what we would call hit and miss events. They might be able to produce good work one day, but the next day it doesn't, and they don't know why. So what's really important is that you do have a process that works, and you can see it's worked for many people. It's reliable and dependable, and from there your confidence, your acting confidence will grow, and the amount of nerves that you have will also reduce because you become more confident in what you're doing. Okay, let's look at how to handle nerves in stage fright. Okay, once difficult, now easy with practice. So going on from what I said of the learning to drive scenario, you know, it's difficult in the beginning, but after practice it becomes really easy. And it's the same with a process. As long as you have a process, a defined process that works, it really does become much easier over a period of time and with lots of practice. So yeah, we've covered this, having a proven process and understanding the right brain, left brain activity to be in the moment. So one of the big things that that can happen on stage or on set is that we come out of the moment. And what I mean by being in the moment or out of the moment is that when you're acting with somebody else on stage or on set, there can be a moment of inspiration where you're absolutely involved in what's happening at that point, and you are working almost, it seems, automatically. It becomes easy. You're naturally going along with the action, and it isn't really that difficult. And what's happening is that you're in the moment. You're in the moment with this person, and you're really listening and really hearing, looking and really seeing, and responding by acting, by responding truthfully. So that's really when you start to become in the moment. However, you can come out of the moment, and this is really when we start to think of other things that are not particularly related with the action that's occurring on stage. It could be, you know, you become aware of the lights, somebody moving in the audience, or something that distracts your concentration basically and takes you out of the moment. So it's really important that you have a way of bringing yourself back to the action, and it really helps if you understand how the right brain and left brain work. Now, for those of you who have never heard about this before, basically our brains have a right side and a left side, and they, you know, really do different functions. They really perform different functions for us. So the right brain, it tends to be more emotional, creative, and that is the kind of side of the brain that we want to work with as actors, because it's a creative, artistic process. The left brain is more logical. It's more about, you know, facts, figures, a logical process of doing things, and so on. So not quite as useful for us. It's still necessary because we have to analyze scripts and understand what's going on. But when we're trying to produce in the moment experiences, emotional experiences, it's really the right brain that we have to communicate with. And here's the thing, with the right brain, the best way to communicate with it is through pictures. But what tends to happen is that we use the left brain sort of way of communication to try and get those sort of creative moments, and it doesn't really work. For example, if you say to your brain, or to yourself if you like, right, I want to get really emotional, I want to get really angry here, and I'm going to play this emotion. It can't be done, is the first thing. You can't play an emotion. It has to be recreated and experienced. That's really if you want to do it for real and in depth, which I guess if you're listening to this right now, that's really what you want to do. And so it really requires us to communicate with the right brain in a different way. And we create pictures. and we create visualizations, and we create other senses around the visual, the smell, the taste, the touch, the sound, of experiences from your own past that might produce a similar emotion to that of which the character is in during the scene. So without going into too much detail, right, because this is a very large subject and requires a lot of explanation, but I'm just trying to give you an understanding of how you can start to distract your brain away from getting it right or not messing up. Because that thought process is a personal process and isn't any use to you on stage or on set. But what is that if you get involved in a particular visualization through the senses, something from your own experience that produces a similar type of emotion, or indeed produces similar set types of needs. We discussed the fact that characters are driven by needs. Well, if you're able to use sensory work, is the term that we give to this process, to visualize experiences from your own past, to bring up a similar need in you that you have to take action on, then it works really powerfully. And the other thing that it does is, by working on the visualization or the sensory, it reduces this left brain activity, which is really about saying, well, I think I might mess this up, or I'm not sure if I'm going to get this right, what will other people think of me. That voice, if you like, is reduced dramatically, and you get involved in a much more creative process. So understanding right brain, left brain activity is quite important. Okay, let's look at how to handle nerves and stage fright. Understanding where you are right now before commencing work. Okay, so what we have to understand is that, as actors, we are organic. We change every day. We have new experiences every day, which changes us. Our environment is constantly changing, which affects us also. So it's important to understand before you commence work where you are right now. You may have, for example, if you were traveling into work, you may have had a terrible journey into work, and that really affects how you think. And it's really affecting how you go about things, and it affects how you feel. Now, for an actor, it's important to understand where you are at that point, because if you don't, then it can really begin to affect your work. You bring it into your work unconsciously. So the old adage of, when you perform on stage, you leave your troubles at the stage door, really doesn't ring true, because unconsciously you will still bring that stuff into your work. So it's important that we begin to address it. And during the method, we have a relaxation process for mind and body that begins to understand where you are right now. And we either decide whether that stuff that has been affecting you is useful within what you're about to do as an actor, or if it isn't useful, then we put it to one side and we get involved in something that will be useful. And that goes back to what we were talking to before about visualization. It's basically what we call sensory work within the method. You would get involved in a sensory to move you away from where you currently are in your personal thinking, and bring you into the area that you have to be concentrating on as an actor. So yeah, that really is the one of the main reasons for using sensory work, is occupying the mind with something real that will propel you into the scene. It's a bit like a springboard. So basically, you want to occupy the mind with something real from your own experience that produces similar type of experiences and emotions that springboard you into the scene. Now, when you begin this process, you will really work on that ability to do that and hold it through the whole scene. But as you become more adept with it, it leaves of its own volition. So you'd work on the visualization, sensory work, and using all the senses to recreate this experience from your own experience. And then once that experience is engendered into you, it will leave very quickly once you're in the scene and you're working with that other person. You're in the moment, responding truthfully. So, but yeah, we need something to propel us into the work. Okay, so we've talked a bit about how the mind works and how that impacts you, and it really does. It's really what's going on in your head to a large extent that will affect your behaviour on stage and on set. So, but the other aspect of this impact is your physicality. So we all know when we're under stress that we have, stress and strain that's impacting what I would call your instrument, which is your body. And we hold tension in different ways. You might hold it in your shoulders, your legs, your hips, your neck. And we have to have a way of physically relaxing, of releasing that tension from the muscles. And that is really important part of or should be a really important part of your relaxation process. And that is something that we encapsulate in the method. Okay, now just to round this off, a solution to stage fright and nerves. One of the reasons the method was developed was to address stage fright and nerves, and it was really a way of starting to allow the actor to reduce these outside forces that will impact their acting, and to really get them into the moment and into a more creative state. Now this is really important because it's about moving you from your everyday sort of state of being that's impacted by other things, society, the people around you, into a more creative state. And what I mean by that is that when we are being creative, our physicality, our mentality, everything begins to change into a more creative way. And really the method was designed to help the actor do that. So it's about starting to allow the actor to understand where the nerves are coming from, a process of beginning to reduce it through the mind, also a physical relaxation process to address any sort of physical tension that there might be. So however you address this particular area of stage fright and nerves, it is really important that you have a process for mind and body that you go through before you start work. Because if you look at any other art forms, if you look at dancers and musicians and so on, they are always warming up before they work. And it's important that the actor does this as well. And the instrument that you have is you. So you don't have a violin, you don't have a trumpet, you don't have a guitar, you have your physical being. So it's important that you warm that up, you begin to understand it, how it ticks, and the buttons that need to be pressed in order to you to do the work that you want to do on stage or on set. So that brings us to the end of this seminar, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.